Hey traders, this is my evening video for January 18th. So that's Wednesday tomorrow here. Please like the video if you get a chance here on YouTube. Appreciate it on the bottom there. At the bottom, I will have a link for my Discord room. It's free if anybody's wanting in. Happy to come in. I mostly share charts there, but I do have some other free rooms if you guys are interested. You can come in for live trading with us as I post live trades, and some of the other members are posting live trades as well. Got a Slack room and a Discord room, whichever you prefer. Okay, guys. So, quick and dirty here. What we're looking at real quick here. We achieved my down targets and bounced right at my down targets I had in my morning video. Once again, I nailed the levels for today. So, now going into tomorrow, I'm a little bit skeptical here. What we're going to do here, I have one thesis that they're going to do their best to hold the markets up here until we start seeing some mega tech earnings coming out, and then they might break us down further. So we came down into the 2024 anchored VWAP. So anchoring from January 2nd till today, we came right down to it on SPY, overshot it a little bit. But my primary thesis this morning was we're going to start with SPY, and then we'd come down into Qs. We did both scenarios today. So we did accomplish both of my goals that I had spelled out in the morning video. So heads up on that going forward here. So what we got going on here are VWAPs, anchored VWAPs on a weekly time basis. So I anchor my VWAPs on Friday close coming into the next week. So we are not in a trending market. You want your anchor VWAPs one week after another, and you want to be trading above that anchor VWAP the majority of that current week. Right now, we are trading below last week's anchored VWAP by a considerable margin here. So be mindful of that. Our uptrend is in jeopardy. It may not be that way by the end of the week, but our uptrend is definitely in jeopardy. So I have uh, this yellow line represents the current trend of this week's anchored VWAP. Okay, we are currently trading below trend for the current week's anchored VWAP. We are currently trading below the anchored VWAP from last week. So we have two strikes against us to kick off the trading week going into next week. So going into tomorrow. So be mindful of that. Our bias should still lean to the downside, based off of where we're trading in relation to these anchored VWAPs going into the overnight session. Now, tomorrow morning, we're looking about 9 o'clock. It's going to put us right here. So if we go flat into the overnight session, we will be into that anchored VWAP trend line. It could go either way. We could have a relief rally, which that's what we typically been having. And this is a very critical yearly support level. So you would think that they should find some buyers at this level. So be very mindful of that going forward. Now, with that in thought, I'm starting with SPY, so I want to go over here to my other chart on the uh, uh, UVOL versus DVOL. Okay, this does with stocks. Okay, what they are doing so far this week, they are selling in. They are selling stocks in OPEX week. So they are selling and closing at the dead low. So there are large orders sitting out there they are dumping into so far this week. So be very mindful of that. That there is liquidation happening under the hood, despite the fact that we're holding up here. Just be very mindful of that situation going forward here. So with that, with the breath doing that and where we are technically, you shouldn't have loaded the boat to the long side going into tomorrow. Just be mindful of that. On that chart. Okay, Qs. Okay, Qs. We'll zoom in here a little bit here. Okay, so Qs are looking a little bit better here. So we are getting a actual candle above this week's anchored VWAP already here at 8 o'clock tonight. So, and this was despite having really bad Japan data that just hit the tape about an hour ago. Really bad manufacturing data out of Japan, and we're still trying to hold this week's anchored VWAP, but we are still below last week's. So this is really one of the best charts that I'm seeing out there right now. So be very mindful of that. We still got a gap from today that has not been satisfied. So be mindful of that. We got this massive gap that we came down this morning. We never did come back up and refill this gap. So be mindful of that going into tomorrow's session. So about, yes, this is looking better, constructive, but it's not a sure thing yet. So be very mindful of that. In the same token, UVol versus default closing at the dead lows of the session, although the cumulative number is not quite as bad as yesterday. That's just one small takeaway. So, but yeah, we are closing at dead low. There is some, massive profit taking happening under the hood. So be very mindful of that. Okay, going forward here. So be very mindful of that situation. So we go into tomorrow, Thursday, 9 o'clock. Okay, guys. So basically, if we open flat here, that's going to put us up in this region right here. And this is actually a pivot, a critical pivot area as well. So be very mindful of this. So in my opinion, in the overnight session, since we are above that trend line, we could be coming back up into last week's anchor VWAP before the open tomorrow. So I just want to, that's a possibility here. I mean, that would be our leading indicator. So if we were to come up to this, trying to break out above that, that would reestablish our uptrend if we were starting to accept prices above 408. We really need prices to be accepted above 408 for the bullish uptrend in Qs to be intact. Now, on the flip side, I didn't forget to mention about that on SPY back here. Uh, we really need to be over 475 to to reignite the bullish uptrend in SPY. So be mindful here. Yes, you can buy the dip. Yes, you can play it up. But as far as a momentum trader goes, you really want prices above 475 for the momentum to continue to the upside. So be very mindful of that scenario on SPY. Okay, IWM. Russell. Here's your Russell 2000. All right, so go into about 9 o'clock tomorrow. Okay, so we should be over top of that. If we open in this area, we should be above this anchored VWAP on the Russell tomorrow morning. We have coming off of our target down here. Okay, this is last week's anchored VWAP. So you really want a close, or you want the prices to be above 192.50 ish on IWM for you to be, you know, uh, this thing here is really a broken chart. Okay, so you can't really say the uptrend's going to be, it's saving the uptrend. Okay, but that it would be accepting prices up here would be constructive. Let's put it that way, and that we might actually start an inverse head and shoulders scenario. If we come back up here, inverse head and shoulders, that would be targeting 188 all the way up to 197, something like that. It's about 10 points. 187, that puts you, about 208, somewhere around 208, possible upside target if this inverse head and shoulders were to play out. Similar situation. Come over here, UVol, devol. Now this is a little bit different here. It's not nearly as telling. So, what they've been doing to drive the Russell down is some of the bigger names in Russell uh, have been getting sold down, but the breadth itself is not being impacted quite as bad on the Russell here. So be mindful of it. But those are pretty significant negative ticks. Negative 1200 on the ticks. And if you go out here on, say, a 4 hour, let's see here. Yeah, keep it in context here. See, negative 1283. This is some of the, I actually come think about that. It's pretty bad. So, in relation on the standard deviation points, we are pushing the extremes of the standard deviation sell off that we have seen for quite some time now, for months now. So, this is actually worse than I initially realized. So, yeah, so we'll definitely keep that one on watch going forward here. Okay. We are getting a little bit of divergence here. The advanced decline. We have some. So we're not just falling out of bed. There are some equities trying to advance despite this horrible deviation is right here on the Russell. Okay. Now let's stop off diamonds. I don't have the other chart for the diamonds, but just the final little thing here going at 9 o'clock here. 9 o'clock. We open right around here. Put this right into that anchored VWAP as well. So it's not a big surprise to see them taken. They took us where they needed to hold prices flat for the overnight session, and then to decide whether or not they want to take us higher or lower in the morning. So that's just the main takeaway that I do have setting up here. Some of my monsters of tech real quick. I gotta go through them real quick. Apple, the worst of the breed. We are below the 2023 and 2024 yearly anchor VWAPs on Apple. So below 183 is a really big problem. So we need Apple to start accepting prices above 183. So be very mindful of that. Apple came out, said they were lower prices today. So be very mindful of that. Very bad China data. Apple can't sell phones in China because the Huawei has actually got a really good comparable phone to Apple at a much cheaper price. So yeah, Apple could have a lot of problems there in China. So we're well below last week's anchored VWAP. The slope is a lot more flat, so that we have signs even after today, signs more accumulation, a potential accumulation zone, because of the slope being the way it is here on Apple. They might be accumulating Apple down here for a breakout move to the upside. So be very mindful of that. We are below the pivot. See this Fibonacci right here. That is our pivot. That's another thing I forgot to mention is the pivot early a few minutes ago on those other charts. Microsoft, yeah, very bullish. Continues to maintains to be bullish here. So some things I'm looking at here. Yeah, we're definitely looking like we're going Thursday 9 o'clock. Very likely that we're going to be over top of this current anchors VWAP, and this is last week's anchored VWAP. So these are lining up for a very bullish chart for a possible continuation back to all-time highs tomorrow. So if we were to continue to get a bid, Microsoft would be one of my first ideas, thinking we could go back to all-time highs tomorrow. So definitely keep that one on watch. AMD is another one. It's the strongest chart of them all going. And I actually made my money shorting AMD today. I actually thought it would get a bigger, deeper pullback. It did not. So that was the one thing I made money on today. So if you notice right here, your current anchored VWAP for this week is still in an uptrend. Okay, we're still in an uptrend. It's the only mega cap stock that the current week anchor VWAP is still in an uptrend. So be very mindful of that. And our weekly anchored VWAP is well below us here. So these are all lined up for a bullish breakout to the upside potential here. Not saying that it can even happen this week. I am just saying, the elements are there. This is the strongest, but by trend and by all the ingredients, AMD is the strongest stock out there. Okay, I've already showed you Apple; it was the worst, and the next one, Tesla, is the second worst, if not the worst. Okay, we're below the 2023 and the 2024 yearly anchor VWAPs on this. So this is a bearish pattern, just like Apple. Apple's getting awfully close to crossing back to the bullish side of the anchor VWAP, but it hasn't done it yet. Tesla's a lot further away. So, but like I said, we're coming down in the after hours. Now we've got to reach up in the morning session just to get back to this. So this is one of my least favorite stock to the upside. You have last week's anchored VWAP above us, so this is starting to trend to the downside. This looks more and more like a breakdown pattern that we are going possibly 200 or lower before the week's out. So this is really my most bearish chart in my opinion at the current time. Okay. Other things I'm looking at here, so I can go Amazon real quick. Amazon current VWAP. If we open flat here, puts us right on that. So it's gonna go with the markets in general here. We are below last week's ANCVWAP. Be mindful of that. So that is got a red flag that we technically have a bearish pattern developing here. So be very mindful of that. You don't want to be overly bullish knowing these things, because you've gotten rid of a lot of momentum traders to the upside because this is below this. Until we clear 154, it's not really a bullish pattern again. So be very mindful of that. Okay, and you have to really clear that 154, and that is, see this pivot right here. So if you actually put your Fibonacci retracement on this trade right here, that's a pivot. Boom, boom. It came right off the pivot area down here. That's your new pivot. So you have to get above 153 to even consider that this is actually setting up to break out to the upside. So a lot of reasons to think that thing there is going to have trouble. Google, similar situation here. This is the pivot right here. So we're right into the pivot area right there. Okay, came down. If you do the measured move, that brings us right down into this area. Looks like it could actually be opening above. So this one here is showing a little bit more relative strength here. Okay, and we're awfully close to last. So this one here is actually giving us signs that if we break to the upside, this one here could actually turn bullish faster than a lot of the other things in the market. So be very mindful of that. It wouldn't take much to get this one. Meta's the same way. Meta, look at this. Meta looks like it could actually flip the switch back to our bullish uh, scenario much faster than what we could in other things. We're already crossing over the this week's ANCVWAP, so this here would probably be one of the three strongest stocks going into tomorrow's session, with a really good chance that we are actually going to go back into a momentum upside scenario going forward here. Netflix, oops, and FLX. Netflix looking really bearish. This would be one of my worst stocks. You have to actually you'll probably have to, let's say 9 o'clock. You'll have to, from the current sell price, you're going to have to reach up just to get into resistance. And then it's ways you have to break out above yesterday's highs. Yeah, a lot of overhead here on Netflix if you're thinking about a breakout trade to the upside. Boeing, it's one I typically follow as well. It went flat, literally flat today on the, I don't have it on the chart here, but the VWAP here actually works pretty good for where it's at here. So we are actually flat on the week on our trend. So we're going sideways. We digested the big sell down here, still well below the anchor VWAP. But basically, we're just completely flat on trend. Really, if we just open sideways, it's still flat on trend. So, be very mindful of that. So, okay, any others I can think of real quick here? I think I've covered everybody. Bottom line is, we got a lot of downtrends in this week's. So if we have bad news coming out, that would keep the downtrend of the anchored VWAPs here on these megatechs intact, and we could continue to push to the downside. So we have a lot of reasons to think, just like Apple's a really good one. The slope's not quite as bad with Apple here, but Tesla's probably the best one uh, for the bearish. It's got a steeper slope for a breakdown tomorrow potentially here, and then the most bullish one would be AMD with the slope to the upside. See, we got a strong slope to the upside for AMD. So be very mindful. Those are two scenarios. Thinking we'll probably go up to the 167 on AMD tomorrow into this resistance zone. That put us into the all-time highs potentially here on AMD. So be very mindful of that into tomorrow's session um, going forward here. So thanks a lot for listening, and I will see you tomorrow in the trading room.